The cop pointed his gun at AOC during a traffic stop. What she said next got him arrested in 5 minutes and destroyed his career forever. The dashboard clock glowed 11:47 p.m. as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez drove through the quiet streets of Queens, heading home after a grueling 16-hour day in Washington. Her black Tesla Model 3 hummed silently through the nearly empty roads, the city's usual chaos replaced by an eerie calm that only existed in the deepest hours of night. She'd missed dinner again, survived on coffee and determination, but that was the price of fighting for change in a system designed to resist it. AOC adjusted her rearview mirror, her brown eyes heavy with exhaustion but still alert. At 35, she'd learned to stay vigilant. Death threats were a weekly occurrence, and late-night drives through her own district weren't always safe, even for a sitting member of Congress. Her phone sat in the cup holder, fully charged out of habit, its black screen reflecting the streetlights that flickered past her window. She wasn't speeding. In fact, she was going exactly 35 mph in a 35 mph zone, her hands positioned perfectly at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. Years of being under constant scrutiny had taught her to be flawless in everything she did, because one mistake could be weaponized by her enemies and turned into front-page news. But tonight, none of that would matter. The red and blue lights exploded in her rearview mirror without warning, cutting through the darkness like a predator's eyes. AOC's heart skipped a beat as she glanced at her speedometer, then at her phone to check if she'd missed any alerts about road closures or emergencies. Nothing. No reason for this stop. No explanation for why a police cruiser was now following her with its sirens wailing in the dead of night, but the cop had no idea who he was messing with. Officer Marcus Delroy had been having the worst month of his career. 3 excessive force complaints had landed on his sergeant's desk. His partner had requested a transfer after their last incident, and Internal Affairs was breathing down his neck like vultures circling a dying animal. He was one mistake away from losing his badge, and tonight he was looking for someone to take his frustrations out on. When he'd spotted the Tesla cruising through his patrol area, a car that screamed privilege and wealth in a neighborhood where most people drove 10-year-old sedans, his radar had started buzzing. Rich liberals in expensive cars, he thought to himself, probably another Manhattan elite slumming it in Queens. He'd find something wrong. He always did. Delroy flipped on his lights and hit the siren, watching with satisfaction as the Tesla immediately signaled and pulled over. Good, he thought. At least this one knows how to follow orders. He took his time getting out of the cruiser, adjusting his belt and making sure his body camera was turned off, a habit he developed over the years when he wanted to have private conversations with drivers who needed attitude adjustments. As he approached the Tesla, his hand instinctively moved to rest on the grip of his service weapon. It was a gesture designed to intimidate, to establish dominance before the first word was spoken. He'd done this dance 1,000 times before, and it always ended the same way, with complete submission from whatever scared driver he'd decided to target. AOC rolled down her window as the officer approached, keeping her hands visible on the steering wheel exactly as she'd been taught during congressional security training. Her heart was racing, but her expression remained calm and professional. She'd dealt with hostile law enforcement before, had heard the stories from her constituents about traffic stops that went wrong, about officers who saw her district as a playground for their power trips. "Good evening, officer," she said in a clear, steady voice. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" Officer Delroy leaned down toward her window, his flashlight beam cutting across her face with deliberate harshness. In the harsh LED glare, he couldn't make out her features clearly, just another woman in a nice car who probably thought she was better than him. His jaw was already clenched with the anticipation of conflict. "License and registration," he barked, completely ignoring her question. "And keep your hands where I can see them." AOC nodded slowly, reaching carefully into her purse. "I'm reaching for my wallet now, officer," she announced, moving with deliberate precision. She pulled out her congressional ID first, the one with the official seal of the House of Representatives, and handed it to him along with her driver's license. Delroy barely glanced at the ID before his face twisted into a sneer. "Very funny," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You got this fake ID from some novelty shop? Think you're real clever, don't you?" For a moment, AOC was speechless. She'd encountered hostility before, but this level of willful ignorance was something new. "Officer, that's my official congressional identification. I'm Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I represent this district. You can verify." "Shut up," Delroy snapped, his hand moving more aggressively to his weapon. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but impersonating a federal official is a felony. Step out of the vehicle, now." AOC's blood ran cold as she saw his hand close around the grip of his gun. This wasn't a routine traffic stop anymore. This was a dangerous man with a loaded weapon who refused to listen to reason. Her mind raced through her options, each one more terrifying than the last. She could comply and hope he didn't escalate further, but that meant putting herself at the mercy of someone who was clearly unhinged. She could refuse and risk him drawing his weapon, but that could end with her becoming another statistic, another hashtag, another name on a memorial wall. "Officer, I need you to calm down," she said, her voice still steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. "You can call this in to dispatch, they'll confirm my identity." There's no need for what AOC said next changed everything. But before she could finish her sentence, Delroy's gun was out of its holster, pointed directly at her through the open window. The sight of the barrel, black and merciless in the streetlight, sent a shockwave of adrenaline through her system. This was it. This was how it could all end. Not in the halls of Congress fighting for her constituents, but on a dark street in Queens at the hands of a corrupt cop who refused to see her as human. "I said get out of the car," Delroy screamed, his voice cracking with rage and paranoia. "Keep your hands up and move slowly, or I'll put you down right here." For a split second, AOC considered compliance. Every instinct screamed at her to do whatever it took to survive this encounter. But then something else kicked in. Not just survival instinct, but the voice of every constituent who had ever told her about their own encounters with police brutality. Every family member who had been targeted because of their skin color or their zip code. Every person who had ever been failed by a system that was supposed to protect them. AOC looked directly into Delroy's eyes, her voice cutting through the night air like a blade. "Officer, you are pointing a firearm at a sitting member of Congress during an unlawful detention. You have 30 seconds to holster your weapon and call your supervisor, or you will be facing federal charges that will destroy your life and your career forever." The words hit Delroy like a physical blow. For the first time since the stop began, doubt crept into his eyes. There was something in her voice, an authority that went beyond fear, a certainty that spoke to power he'd never encountered before. But his pride, his rage, his desperate need to maintain control overrode his survival instincts. "I don't give a damn who you think you are," he shouted, taking a step closer to the car. "You're going to, Officer Marcus Delroy, badge number 4457, currently under investigation by Internal Affairs for 3 excessive force violations." Delroy's blood turned to ice. How could she possibly know that? His name, his badge number, his Internal Affairs record, information that wasn't public, that she couldn't have known unless... AOC's voice continued, calm and relentless. "Your partner requested a transfer 2 weeks ago after your incident with the Rodriguez family. Your sergeant filed a complaint about your conduct last month. You're 1 violation away from losing your pension, and right now you're committing a federal crime on camera." "What camera?" Delroy demanded, his voice cracking as he looked around frantically. AOC tilted her head slightly toward her dashboard. "Tesla vehicles record everything, Officer Delroy. Full HD video, crystal clear audio, automatically uploaded to secure servers. And unlike your body camera, which I notice you've conveniently turned off, mine can't be tampered with or erased." The gun in Delroy's hand began to shake. His world was collapsing in real time, and he could feel it slipping away with each word she spoke. But the most shocking moment was yet to come. AOC reached slowly for her phone, her movements deliberate and calm. "I'm going to make a phone call now, Officer Delroy. You can either holster your weapon and we can resolve this professionally, or you can continue threatening a federal official on camera and face the consequences." She dialed a number she knew by heart, the direct line to the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Task Force, a number every member of Congress had been given after the January 6th attacks. The phone barely rang once before a voice answered. "Agent Martinez, Federal Protection Detail. Agent Martinez, this is Representative Ocasio-Cortez. I'm being held at gunpoint by a police officer during an unlawful traffic stop in Queens. I need immediate federal response." Even through the phone speaker, Delroy could hear the agent's voice. "Ma'am, can you confirm your location? We're dispatching federal agents and NYPD supervisors immediately." AOC gave her exact coordinates, her voice never wavering. "The officer's name is Marcus Delroy, badge 4457. He has drawn his weapon and is threatening to shoot me despite my identification as a federal official. I have everything recorded." Delroy's face went white as the reality of his situation crashed down on him. Federal agents, NYPD supervisors, federal charges. His career wasn't just over. His life as he knew it was destroyed. "You can't do this," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I was just doing my job." AOC looked at him with something that wasn't quite pity but wasn't cruelty either. "Your job was to serve and protect, Officer Delroy, and instead you chose to terrorize and threaten. Now you get to live with the consequences." In the distance, the sound of sirens began to grow louder. Not just one or two vehicles, but what sounded like an entire convoy racing through the night toward their location. Delroy's hand slowly lowered, the gun pointing toward the ground as the weight of his actions finally penetrated his consciousness. The first vehicle to arrive wasn't an NYPD patrol car, but a black SUV with federal plates. Two agents in tactical gear emerged, their own weapons drawn and trained on Delroy before he could even think about raising his gun again. "Drop your weapon," came a voice from the second vehicle that screeched to a halt. 3 patrol cars had arrived simultaneously, their occupants taking defensive positions behind their doors. Delroy's gun clattered to the asphalt as his hands shot up in surrender. The fight, the rage, the desperate need for control, all of it evaporated in the face of overwhelming force arrayed against him. What happened in the next 24 hours destroyed him completely. The arrest was swift and thorough. Federal agents cuffed Delroy while NYPD supervisors secured the scene and began collecting evidence. AOC's Tesla had indeed recorded everything in pristine 4K resolution. Delroy drawing his weapon, his threats, his refusal to acknowledge her identification, every moment of his complete breakdown of professional conduct. But the recording was just the beginning. Within hours, AOC's chief of staff had compiled a comprehensive dossier on Officer Delroy's conduct record. 3 excessive force complaints in 6 months, 7 civilian complaints over the past year, a pattern of targeting drivers in expensive vehicles or residents of certain neighborhoods. Internal Affairs had been building a case against him for months, but had lacked the final piece of evidence needed to terminate him. Now they had it, in 4K video with crystal clear audio. The story broke on social media before it hit the news. AOC herself posted a carefully worded statement explaining the incident, along with a portion of the Tesla footage that showed Delroy drawing his weapon and making threats. The video went viral within hours, shared millions of times across every platform. But this wasn't just about one corrupt cop. AOC used the incident as a springboard to highlight the broader issues of police accountability and the reform measures she'd been pushing for years. Her press conference the next day was masterful. Standing at the podium in her congressional office, with the American flag behind her and cameras rolling, she didn't just tell her story, she connected it to the experiences of thousands of her constituents who didn't have federal protection, expensive lawyers, or the platform to fight back. "Last night I experienced what too many Americans face every day," she began, "the terror of being threatened by someone sworn to protect and serve. The difference is, I had resources, I had a platform, I had agents who would respond to my call. Most people don't have those advantages." She held up a folder thick with documents. "This contains over 200 complaints from residents of my district about police misconduct, stories of families terrorized during traffic stops, young people arrested on trumped-up charges, senior citizens harassed for walking in their own neighborhoods." The press conference was watched by over 15 million people live, and the clips were shared endlessly across social media. AOC traffic stop became a trending hashtag, but so did police accountability now and justice for all. Officer Marcus Delroy was fired from the NYPD before the week was over. The federal charges came next: deprivation of rights under color of law, a federal crime that carried up to 10 years in prison. His police pension was terminated, his benefits cut off, and his reputation destroyed so thoroughly that he became unemployable in law enforcement anywhere in the country. But AOC wasn't done. She used the momentum from the incident to push through police reform legislation that had been stalled in committee for months. The Tesla recording incident, as it came to be known, became a rallying cry for activists who had been fighting for police accountability for years. 3 months later, Delroy was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. His guilty plea included an admission that he had targeted AOC, not because of any traffic violation, but because he had seen an expensive car and assumed its driver was someone he could intimidate with impunity. The impact extended far beyond one corrupt officer. NYPD implemented new policies requiring body cameras to remain active during all traffic stops. Training programs were overhauled to include de-escalation techniques and bias recognition. And most importantly, a federal oversight board was established to investigate patterns of misconduct across police departments nationwide. AOC's office received thousands of letters from people who had experienced similar encounters but had never spoken up because they didn't think anyone would believe them. Each letter reinforced her conviction that the system needed fundamental change, not just individual accountability. The officer who had pointed his gun at her thinking she was just another victim had inadvertently given her the most powerful weapon of all, irrefutable proof that the problem was real, systemic and urgent. During her next town hall meeting in Queens, an elderly woman approached the microphone during the question period. "Representative Ocasio-Cortez," she said, her voice shaking with emotion, "my grandson was stopped by police last year. They didn't believe his ID either, but he didn't have a Tesla camera or federal agents to call. Thank you for fighting for people like him." AOC nodded, her eyes glistening. "That's exactly why this matters. It's not about me, it's about making sure everyone has the same protection under the law, regardless of who they are or what they drive." The incident became a case study in police academies across the country, not as an example of what to do, but as a stark warning about what happens when officers let prejudice and ego override their training and judgment. For Delroy, rotting in a federal prison cell, the 5 minutes he had spent with his gun pointed at AOC represented the complete destruction of everything he had built over 20 years in law enforcement. His wife had divorced him, his children refused to speak to him, and his fellow inmates made sure he understood exactly how they felt about corrupt cops. But for AOC, those same 5 minutes had become a catalyst for change that would benefit millions of Americans. She had turned a moment of terror into a tool for justice, proving once again that sometimes the most powerful response to abuse of power is simply refusing to be silenced. The message was clear. In America, no one is above the law, not even those sworn to enforce it. And when that principle is violated, there are consequences that can destroy a career, a reputation, and a life in a matter of minutes. Officer Marcus Delroy had learned that lesson the hardest way possible, and millions of Americans had watched it happen in real time, recorded in crystal-clear 4K video that would serve as evidence forever that justice, however delayed, eventually comes for those who abuse their power. The cop thought he could intimidate a woman in an expensive car. Instead, he had chosen to point his gun at one of the most powerful people in America, and she had made him pay for that mistake in ways he never could have imagined.